I don't have much time, so if things sound a little weird, just bear with me. This is a warning if you see black clouds at all. Just run. Doesn't matter where you are. I don't know if this thing is spreading. I'm getting ahead of myself. On April 5th, my wife and I took off for a wedding in Vermont. Before we left, we heard the news talk about a big northeastern storm front that's going to drop a bunch of snow and ice. Even though it looks like we're going to be okay since our plane is landing technically in New Hampshire, just south of the storm. The flight was 2 hours, but about halfway through the trip, the clouds started to change colors, not gray like you'd expect, darker, more like black, looking more like volcanic ash clouds than normal storm clouds. My wife was busy playing her Nintendo Switch, but since I was just laid off, I had a lot on my mind. I was surprised nobody else noticed it, but off in the distance, I could have sworn I saw something move in the distance. It was hard to tell, but it sort of looked like a wing swooping through the cloud, like a fish that makes a 180 at the surface. The pressure wake pushing the clouds outward, like something was coming, then changed its mind. It had to be a trick on my eyes, probably. It had to have been the sun hitting and reflecting away from the ash clouds. I shouldn't have been assuming that they were ash clouds, but I was proven right. The pilots never made any announcements, and I didn't actually see anything either, so I kept my mouth shut. Maybe if I didn't, things would have turned out different for Courtney. When I looked away, I happened to catch one of the flight attendants staring at me, her head slightly tilted, and wouldn't take her eyes off me. It sounds strange, but it felt like she was waiting to see if I was about to tell my wife what I saw. I decided to keep looking busy, and even decided to shut my eyes for a few minutes, thinking something else would distract the old veteran stewardess' attention. It had to be about 10 minutes because I listened to my favorite song twice, and another song before opening my eyes. And to my shock, she was still looking at me. Now her teeth looked different, like she was trying hard to smile. I swear it looked like her gums were bleeding. I decided to get up and go to the bathroom, the one furthest from her. That must have done the trick, cause when I came back, she had moved on to her normal duties, serving passengers. When I got back, my wife finally noticed the black clouds. By this time, we could barely see past the wing. Do the pilots see anything? Not wanting to worry her, I assured her they have all kinds of communications and radars. Even if they can't see in front of them, they know where they're going. She gave me a look. Courtney was like that. She could see right through me like an MRI machine. The fasten belt sign came on, and with it, the pilot's voice. Attention travelers, we will be making our descent momentarily. Please make sure all loose items are stored as you won't be needing them. What does that mean? That was weird. I looked around, and thankfully someone else, who I would shortly find out was our air marshal on the plane. He stood up and made his way to the cockpit. His face had concern written all over it. He shut the drapes behind him so no one could see him. I heard him knocking loudly and asking to be let in. Just then, the stewardess from earlier rushed by me, running against my arm. Suddenly, my arm was in drastic pain. I looked down, and it looked like someone took a cheese shredder to my arm. My wife looked to try and help me. "Oh my God, are you okay? What happened?" I told her I wasn't sure and started pressing dirty paper towels and a Skittles wrapper on my wounds to stop the bleeding. My wife yelled for help. Other people started looking, and in the confusion, nobody else had seen the air marshal struggling except me, as he was pulled into the bathroom by the stewardess. Except she now looked more like a demon face, with black scales on the forearm and her lethal hands with sharp claws. The panic on the man's eyes, or maybe it was pain. Just as the door shut, I could notice his skin turning red. It looked like it was being burned off by the touch of that thing pretending to be a stewardess. Before I could tell anyone to look, the air marshal disappeared onto the airplane bathroom. By this time, my wife noticed my face and looked up front but didn't see anything. "Are you okay?" I suffered to tell her. Something took the air marshal. She looked at me confused, and just then, gunshots rang out in the cabin, and bullets began flying out of the bathroom from where the marshal was dragged. His screams were guttural. He must have got loose, but he never made it out of that bathroom. More bullets were shot, and everyone scattered. Several shots hit the cockpit, and luckily didn't penetrate the bulletproof door. Unfortunately, one of the bullets did shoot out one of the pressurized windows. The next few minutes were a blur. Everyone was panicking, and with no direction, everyone braced for the inevitable. I looked out the window just as we were about to hit. We were through the clouds, and what I was seeing wasn't New Hampshire. It looked like some kind of hellscape. Lava rivers and large mounds in the distance, and horned monstrosities roamed the outskirts of the airport. The barbed wire fencing that looked more like fences made with rubber or skin, and buildings were covered in ash and strange demonic-looking symbols. After that, blackness. I eventually woke up, hanging, nearly falling out of my seat. I appeared to be only a few feet off the ground. I sat alone. My wife's seat was broken clean off. I couldn't see her and didn't see anybody else living. I prepared myself and unlatched the seatbelt. I tucked and managed to save my 33-year-old ankles when I hit the ground. I stood up, getting my bearings, when I finally got to look around and noticed there was no sun. It should have been 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it looked like it was midnight. Alone and scared, I tried calling out, but I was afraid to draw the attention of those giant monsters I saw just before we crashed. Just then, I heard a girl screaming. Instinct kicked in, and I ran to help. I jumped over debris and body parts from the passengers. All I could think was, if this was Courtney, what could I do? I rounded one of the plane's engines on fire, and I wish I hadn't seen what I witnessed next. A early 20s Gen Z girl was covered in dirt. Her face cut up really bad, so bad I couldn't tell if she still had her eyes, but the worst of it finally hit me when I realized what she was doing. She was feeling her legs, or lack of. She cried for her and screamed for her mom while She grabbed at the stumps that were her legs. I have to admit, I was scared. I was in shock. How can I help her? I didn't know, but knew I couldn't let her suffer alone. I took a step when suddenly I heard another woman, but this wasn't screaming, it was laughing. Suddenly, a beautifully terrifying demon woman walked around the corner, and with her 2 tiny crawling demons. Ooh, my child, save your screams, we're just getting started. With a snap of her fingers, I watched as the demons tore into this poor girl. Her screams drew in more nearby demon dogs. The more you despair, the more you will suffer. Embrace the sufferings, and you will be released from it. The girl cried as best she could as the monsters tore into her throat. But with one last breath, she must have gave her what the demon wanted. Suddenly, they were surrounded in black smoke and disappeared. The demon dogs, the demon woman, and the girl. I was left alone among the debris, death, and ash-filled air. I didn't know what to do. I found a place to hide. I thought this was hell. I found out later it wasn't. After having a breakdown under the debris of the crashed plane and still having no idea if my wife was even alive, but I had this weird feeling to keep going. It just kept saying, keep alive and keep moving. Shit, I hear demon dogs coming. I needed to be fast. Sometime after my encounter, I heard something loud and deep, but familiar. Sounded like an engine, a plane. I ran through piles of debris from burned cars, planes, cruise ships, and buses. I stopped near a debris mount, just in time to see a large 747 punch through the cloud barrier, this one landing just like we were supposed to do. I took up and noticed flying demons scatter as the plane hooked to the terminal gate. Just then, the hundreds of demons surrounding the tarmac shrieked like they were welcoming something. Suddenly, from a shadowy hole in the ground, erupted a giant serpent. The giant snake-like creature slithered around the plane like a boa constrictor, preparing to suffocate its prey. Just then, the door opened, and immediately, I could hear people screaming for their lives. Just then, I watched as a humanoid demon dressed like a pilot in torn uniform with random horns tearing his suit and skin off. Like the pilot was wearing a costume, it started throwing passengers from the plane. Demon dogs and other emaciated humanoid demons began to swarm the passenger. A middle-aged man in a $5,000 suit. He screamed as the creature tore off his clothes and carried off into the main terminal. He swung his suitcase as his only weapon just before he disappeared into the terminal. One of the smallest humanoid demons jumped up and bit down on his wrist, stopping him from injuring any other demon from the metal suitcase. I could hear him scream, even louder, begging for help and to be let go. Before he vanished into the terminal, I saw the little demon tear the guy's hand off. Was that where Courtney was taken? I thought. I carefully navigated my way inside. I don't know why I put myself through these sights. Something in me just kept demanding I move forward, like I had to see it. I watched as all these passengers from planes, buses, and people who just got lost on a car ride ended up here. They were sorted into carved out with paths, the ground, and surrounded by barbed wire. Come on, you meat sacks. It's time to sort you out. Who's one of us, and who's meat for the grinder? One of the sick-looking demons with a sharp pike yelled at these poor souls, shuffling them through to the giant rotating spike, just like TSA instructing passengers to go through security. Demon guards pushed each person toward the front of the line, where a larger demon would look at each person and classify them. Aviation, infantry, necrotics. This one has spirit. Training pits. We'll beat that out of you, or we'll eat you. The brave man, who looked like a soldier type, broad shoulders, tattoos, looked like someone from the movie 13 Hours with the army guys in Benghazi. One by one, people were chosen for roles in Hell's forces. As far as I could tell, there was a small percent of prisoners that the demons didn't want anything to do with in their Hell army, which I thought was really weird. Wouldn't everyone make a good soldier? I never got my answer. One of the flying demons landed near the ventilation duct I was hiding in and needed to sneak away. I made my way through the vents. To my relief, nothing was in there with me. At least, nothing never found me. Eventually, I found my way to an airport authority office. It looked guarded with several bear-looking and bear-sized demon guarding. Using the vents, I quietly snuck in and found what appeared to be a map with some demon casting a spell over the airport on the giant omnidirectional map. I could see a bubble round the airport. The first thing I thought was, it's hiding this place. Whatever that thing in the airport authority office was, it's somehow cloaking this airport, and the demons are building an army with our own people. I don't know how, but somehow in this office I had signal. Maybe it's how no one knows this place is gone. I don't know. I don't know anything. Up until an hour ago, I didn't believe in hell. If anyone gets this message, you need to tell everyone, or this demon cloaking this place is for something more than turning people into demons. You have to save these people. Every plane that lands is either adding more soldiers to the enemy's ranks or enslaving more innocent souls. The worst part is the plans are leaving. Who's on them? I don't know. But they can't be human. I'm going to keep exploring. I can't explain this feeling, but something is telling me Courtney's not far. I'm going to find out as much as I can and come back here to relay what I can. This has to be the start of something.